welcome to my channel for Evolved Humans. I'm Ms. Day. This started with two songs in my head at first, right before I started the reading. The very first one I heard it was like an oldie. I think it's two oldies. One of them is that Be My Baby. And then it jumped right into, like really abruptly jumped right into that song, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? And I have no idea who sings the second one, but I think the first one is like the Ronettes, something like that. I've only read it. I don't know that I've heard it out loud. Anyway, so it started with that, which is pretty intense because I also feel like in the beginning, whoever this reading is for, if that is, okay, it was a really quick point. And I think that so one of the things I heard in the beginning, I think it's going to be very easy to know if this reading is for you. That's what I need to say. So in the beginning, I almost feel like whoever this is going to, you have always had a very kind of cutthroat way of jabbing across a point, of getting a point across. Like, I feel like you can do it really harshly and abruptly, but at the same time, that's a good thing. Like, it sounds, I think that the words I'm using, just like that, I think that the words I'm using sound kind of like, negative, but it's just to get the point across very quickly. And that's productive. But, oh, it's so crazy. It's like, it's not crazy. Like, you're not crazy. But this entire reading, there's serious noise going on next door. I don't know if that's going to go into this microphone. I really hope not. But it's like this whole reading was almost this feeling of, okay, I'll just tell you what I saw. So I also saw this image of a person who has been through really deep trials, deeply painful trials and actual experiences in life, and it left you with that experienced evidence that made your perception and your view change, where it makes total sense that it changed because that's based on evidence. But the weirdness is, it's like what you put out is exactly what you get back. And I know that sounds really harsh, but that is exactly how this started. It was like, cut. So I literally, when I laid out the cards, I felt like, ugh, like it's kind of hard to take, but it feels good to get through it. So this should feel good, I hope. I hope this kind of pushes things through. So a lot of emotional and watery stuff has been in like my cards lately, where I see a lot of emotional and watery stuff tied together. And I think that's because it's unstoppable. Like, the emotional stuff is unstoppable. So even if you start here and then you jump over all of the emotional stuff right to the decision, it's not, there's something in between that's like missing then. Like, you're missing all of it, just speeding through. So the part that almost made me feel in the beginning was it's like it's giving a message to be accountable for all of your interactions. And not only for all of your interactions, but to like take a beat away to look at them and how you interact in all of your interactions. Because it's like it's like I feel this pull to someone who senses a need to put up a front. And so it made me think of, like, you can have an upright intention and forward will about you and still fall victim to your human habits and cycles. And I understand that because, like, that's even happened to me recently, where I recognized things that I thought I had eliminated from my life, but all I had done was shifted where I put it. Like, for example, like having OCD tendencies, it has shifted to different things throughout my life, and I have control of it by pushing it where it needs to go in a healthy area, like in a healthy direction, because it's always going to exist as something that I developed experiencing. And I'm always going to experience the world with that as a part of how I learned to experience the world. So recently, I've realized it can go internally and not just externally, which is a duh for a lot of people. But I mean, like, a lot of times we don't necessarily get a message, even though we've received it 9 million times. So this went into feeling, I feel like you want to interact with the high frequency better, which is kind of crazy because that's all everything was about today in every single message that, like, I was receiving. And I didn't even know, it felt like personal as soon as I got ready to do readings, and I didn't even have to do much to get ready because I just started preparing for YouTube, and it felt like I was getting ready for a personal reading. So that was a really long explanation about nothing. So anyway, this is sort of like, I got this really abruptly in the beginning, those songs. So you have to be accountable for all of your interactions, and all of your interactions externally are a reflection of your internal interactions. However that's going, even if you're not fully aware of it at all times, it's always happening. So when you're accountable for that, it's like that song flop in the beginning is a really good example for what the message is. Because the message was kind of like, you can, when you're manifesting a result out into the world, like making something external that didn't exist before you created its existence, it's like what you have to do is emotionally want to produce a result at all, or there will never be an outcome because there'd never be a start. And so what you have to do is emotionally, like if you've ever heard law of attraction coaches, and just about how actions and reactions move, if you emotionally want something to happen, then subconsciously your systems are kind of they begin convincing themselves that they need that to happen. And so that's when they start to rationally look for the avenues to produce those results with your emotional desire to do so. So on the flip side, very abruptly, you can emotionally need something and not experience that need being filled, or experience that need becoming not only not filled but wounded, jabbed at. And it's like you can need a good thing to come in. You can need a good emotional experience, but you emotionally are convinced already that you're going to have a bad one. So it's like you can be fooling yourself into drawing, I need to stop hitting it, into drawing into you what you don't want to come into your life because you are already expecting it to. So it's like you can subconsciously think that you're working for a result that you want, but you're actually just expecting the result you don't want, and that means that you are actually drawing that result that you don't want in, because that's the one that's getting your energy pull. So that's where they're saying to be accountable for all interactions that you have, because that interaction with your own self and your own development, that's how you keep a clear perspective about how you can see the world right. Like, you don't want to see reality skewed because your internal systems are used to skewing it. So it's interesting because I felt like this was a very cutthroat reading message, and that is because I think that's kind of how whoever you are, that's how you operate. And I'm hitting so many things. I'm not sure what that's about, but I don't feel clumsy. I think I'm just I don't know what I'm doing with these things right now. So the needs area for this reading, it's what are your actual needs? I feel like the message is literally, you need to see what you think you are going to get. That's what you need to ask yourself. What do you think, based on the evidence of all of the interactions throughout your life up to this point? What do you think you're going to get when you put out, and this doesn't mean when you put a project out there, when you put yourself out there, to get a new job, when you put your foot out there to interact with someone that you need in your life or that you want to interact with, just because you're trying to grow. Whatever it is that you want to externally experience instead of what you've previously experienced, you have to literally stop expecting to experience the same thing based on evidence, which is pretty difficult, which is why I think actually this is, it's almost okay, the struggle that it feels like you are going to be facing is very, it's sensual, not in a gross way, but it's more an emotional surging type of thing where you're going to be experiencing more of a rush with emotional experiences because your systems are going to be leveling out in a different way. But that's only if you intend for them to do so. And so this is where that being accountable for every interaction that you have, this is crazy. You have to look at the relationship that you have with yourself. No, interaction. You have to look at the interaction that you have with yourself, because you can have awareness and willingness to have accountability for everything that you do and are and say and how you operate. But you can still forget that you lose grip of it as soon as you lose sight of it. as soon as you're not looking at it, it is out of your hands. And it's got other things that can sweep in and wipe out your own will. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's the word I was going for. Suddenly the word sweep sounds like it's not a real word. So the thing also is going forward. Like, I feel like the heart of this reading, the reason it feels like important to go for all of the really harsh points it seems to be bringing out, it's because the heart of this reading is someone who wants to be upright, who wants to be a good person, which are the only people that are good people. So you have to, it's almost like they're giving you a little insight into your own journey, that in the next stage of development, you have to experience something that you haven't experienced yet. And that doesn't, because I feel like this reading is for someone who wants to be a clearer channel for higher frequency stuff. And for whatever reasons, for whatever it is you want to do, whatever with, if you want, and I think that it's a lot about self-connection. That's why this sort of feels like the way to open up is to be accountable for how you interact with yourself. Super crazy. So one of the things that it feels like, okay, so there's advice about your mind and your thoughts going forward, wherever you go, whatever you do, whoever you interact with, whatever you listen to, whatever you're watching, however you use your time. It's like one of the messages is, don't take baggage into the next chapter with you. Do not take your own baggage into the next phase. And that's how you are actually better. That's how you live better. And that's actually stepping up again, which I think some of you may think that you're already super elevated, but I think that you know that you asked for another elevation. Like, I feel like you were like, I'm ready for another level. And so you're getting it. And that's another reason it seems almost like it's really harsh. But it started very embracing too, in that way that song was that Be My Baby song. Like, very sweet. Except the very next moment, it was like, I almost felt like somebody was like, yeah, but is that real? Very untrusting, which makes sense. Okay, so going into the next phase, the way to not take the baggage with you is, again, I don't like the words I'm using. It's just like all it is. It just all feels like bleh. So the way to go forward and to not take that baggage with you is, strangely, so, you know, in a lot of the readings that I've put out here, and even in personal readings and just in life, oftentimes we have to rewrite narratives in our own mind that are based on narratives that other people either placed onto us unknowingly or put into our heads because they thought that of us. So like false narratives that we have to remove, and then so that we can rewrite another. And oftentimes we have to grieve all of the time that we spent carrying those past narratives. So, huge part of healing. Huge deal that probably all of the people listening to this have already done. Because I feel like this is a really big, like, I'm ready for the next level. That's it. This is a lot of authority. And a lot of will, like a very strong force of will. So, which is good. That's it. So, the reason that's odd is because the exact same way that you can like take someone else's narrative, you can also, okay, so that makes me think of the OCD thing. So like I used to be OCD about things outside of my body. At the same time, I could get super creepishly OCD if I were like running and I didn't have music in my ears, because my breathing would suddenly have to be a certain amount of counts in a certain amount of like steps instead of to support my organs, which is just not healthy. So it interfered in certain weird ways, and then that just like intercepted different areas of my life as I grew, because I tried maneuvering it. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because, like I said before, I realized recently I've internalized that even in the areas of eating disorders, where the more pressure I may have had on me at different times, the deeper, darker symptoms of eating disorders I would be interacting with internally. So it's like it all coincided with what was going on out here at all times, just all different levels of how I was interacting with myself. So I know, long explanation, but it ties in, because I feel like that whole you have to remove other people's narratives, you can also become so accustomed to, like I said, based on pure evidence alone, having plenty of reasons not to put your trust, not to like place your trust externally anywhere, by already having in mind what they will do to break it. And that is literally not just a couple thing. Please don't see this as just like a couple thing. It's more so like I'm thinking of even if you're putting something out publicly, where you're like how others will receive what you are delivering. Because it's going to be the result of what you do in here. Everything stems out of your interaction with yourself internally. So it's really important to know what those interactions are and to not lose sight of things that you may have overcome and healed from the wounds, or healed from things that maybe it interfered with your life, but still put them into other areas that you're unaware of. So the thing I keep avoiding saying, which is very strange, whatever, maybe it's not, maybe I do that a lot. So it's that you can also, you can write a narrative about yourself in your own mind that someone else doesn't think, isn't putting on you, and wouldn't. You can literally not only work to remove all of those other narratives that were never yours to begin with, and even that you put on your own self. Like we all do that growing up too, where we think we need to do something or be something, and then we're not, and then we're like, man, I'm a failure. That type of stuff, whatever, all levels. But this is like a huge message with this is don't carry that baggage forward, because that will close the doors. And to go into the next phase, to be interacting with higher level stuff, you have to have bigger doors. Like whatever that means, you have to be more open, because I think I've said it in here, but like I think it's true that the higher you go, the more they know, because the more open you are, the more information you're looking at one time in one space. But it's a bigger space at the same time. So, bigger deal. This feels like that's what this message is. It's like that's how you broaden your view. You have to see that you're broadening your view, but you have to broaden your view of what you're doing in here and how you're interacting out here based on this stuff. Because I think that whoever you are, your baggage isn't what you put onto other people, but I think you put it onto yourself. And I think that it's like from other people, but it's kind of like imagined, and that sounds so rude. But makes me think of one of the comments So, which I didn't know was going to come in at this moment, so I'm going to say that. But like it can be imagined just as easily as it can be received. That's how this happens in your head. That's how abruptly things happen. Just like in the beginning, how those songs just like intercepted with one another. And I feel like the reaction of this reading is that there will be, like, you're going to be able to do it just fine. All you have to do is keep sight of your human being susceptible to being pulled back into old cycles and old habits. You're going to be at an elevated state, and you're going to have an elevated interaction due to your own willingness to do that externally. But internally, you're always going to have to be the authority figure that keeps check. Like, you're going to have to always be that security guard who's like, wait a minute, what did we used to do? Are we doing that in any little secret pocket areas right now? And I'm overlooking it? Because I feel like you can slowly get pulled into things and then lose your sense of happy. But you're willing to do the work to be happy. So that's why I feel like you're getting all of these really abrupt messages. And it's such a cool message because it feels like a very large how to get what you want reading. Like, you want to be upright, you want to remove baggage from the past. And I think that being accountable for the fact that some of that baggage you've already let go of the past. So that means that you need to not carry your own past tendencies into the next chapter. You've earned a new one. So keep sight of it. This is so weird, but it sometimes I think of the scene in Walking Dead where it's like, I have no idea what season or whatever, but it was a long time ago when Carl was little and his dad told him, like, you're never safe. Never think you're safe, because they're never safe, because there's just zombies everywhere. But in this case, it's like you're always going to be able, because you've got so much evidence to work with, because you've seen so much, and because you've elevated so much, you know a lot of stuff that could go wrong. So that makes it really easy to close the door before it's had a chance to be opened. When you're like, this could be literally the best door that you've ever opened. So you have to recognize that there are doors. You're going to get what you ask for. It's an odd thing. Okay, so the thing I didn't mention that I wanted to is the way to use your discernment is literally that, like, no one else can know if you are interacting with reality or making it up in your own head. Like, are you really receiving their perception of you, or are you perceiving them? And in doing so, you're reflecting a past version of yourself that doesn't even exist anymore in their view of you. Where it's like, if you've already evolved, you may think that what other people see is still what you used to look like to them, to people. And they don't see that now because that's so far gone from you. Interesting. This is a super crazy reading. So one of the other things is, I feel like, okay, this is another thing that's kind of odd, but the reason I mentioned emotional stuff is I feel like there are surges happening emotionally where, like, you know something is happening. And I think that you asked for that. Like, I think that you're getting what you asked for. It's just, it doesn't always feel that great because it doesn't look that clear. But I think that you have so much to work with that this is why the messages are so clear cut. Like, be accountable for all interactions in your life stemming from your interaction with yourself. And don't forget how you've done that your whole life at different stages. And don't forget that you've already overcome all of those stages. And so that's not what other people are seeing. Like, you can let yourself soften those walls a bit because they are not coming to get you. This is so interesting. Here's another thing. I don't know. I'm going to talk about this in the member space, but it's like when I've met, okay, something that someone in here you need to know when you're interacting with a low frequency energy, it can be a need and you can respond like it can feel negative. It can be because there's an actual need. And when there's a need, it's a lower frequency than it needs to be. So it starts lower than necessary. So if you're going to help them pull it up, then you have to know what they need. But oftentimes, the low frequency feels like sneaky, which I know that people have said in here before, you've agreed, where it feels like a peripheral thing. So like if I'm going through a house to clear it, when I'm opening up, I'm getting ready to see things that seem sneaky and like they're hiding, but they're not. It's just that they're so low frequency, I'm not supposed to see them. That's not supposed to be visible, so that's why it's not quite visible. It has to be interpreted based on what is able to be seen, like in your own mind. So if it feels sneaky and like somebody's messing with you, it doesn't necessarily mean they are. It can also just mean that they might have a need that you sense automatically, and so all of your alarms are sounding. And that also can feel like a sneaky, like I feel like someone needs to know that it can feel that way with children. And I know that sounds a little bit nuts, but it's true. If you can feel the need, sometimes you can be like, are they hiding something in the back of your mind? But that's because it's a peripheral thing where you're like, I'm sensing something lower frequency than should be happening in this little light, you know? And so this is where it's like, whatever is happening to that first song, I think that needs to serve as a message going forward. That endearing type of feeling, that like, be my baby. It was such a parenty type of like, I've got you. Will you let me? Like, will you let me protect you? Because like they're willing to do it, but are you willing to let them? Because the choice is yours. There's no threat there. When you have a choice, there's no threat. But don't rob yourself of the choice because the potential is there of a threat. It's like, well, it's making me think of that thing, that quote that someone said, which I will be looking up. It was that it is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. That used to be something that really irritated me because I'm like, no, it's not. That's how I used to feel about it. But it's like, if love doesn't die, then yes, it is. It is better. It is better that you have the interaction and that you take the time to figure it out with yourself, because that's something that already, like if you have the potential to make it exist when it wouldn't exist without you doing it, then what else, like what is better to do with your time? It's so neat. It's like you want to serve your purpose in the heart space of this reading. It's like you want to serve your purpose, and I feel like you are pissed that you don't know how to do that, but I feel like you do. All you have to do is sit down and focus on it. It's so weird, not just sit down. Like, I don't know what you need to do, but this does feel like you need to trust that you are getting what you ask for, and you already know that happens. You already know that you can work for a result and get it. So, okay. I'm going to end it at that. I hope this is helpful. Definitely let me know in the comments if it is. That was what it was. I didn't finish it yet. But somebody had asked in the questions at some point in some reading about discerning between reality and like what's not real in your dreams. And I feel like if it is not real, it is imagined. if it's not remembered, if it's not received, and half the time, if you're receiving something from something that's not visible and not actually physically speaking or showing you something, you're interpreting it by creating something on your own with your own imagination. And it's either on point or it's not. So it's like your discernment is the only answer to that question. No one externally would be able to know. I mean, unless it's completely nuts. But anyway, so it's like that's the question. That's the number one question, which is huge. Okay, I'm going to move on. And see you in the next reading. All right, bye.
The sun and the moon, when the skies look and blue, light is catching your eye like it's a